conversation that we had, it got me to think of this kind of dilemma between going and merging ideas and merging disciplines and connecting the dots, and this necessity to have something that is structured, something that is stable, something that is built on specialization and expertise. Have you ever felt this conflict between those two approaches, or were you ever compelled to kind of go in one direction and not another? This is not a musical pun, by the way.
No. Yeah, there's always been a tension. Yeah, because I mean, like I said, essentially one aspect of me, I'm a people pleaser, and so, and I know that strangely upsets people if you're a polymath, because they can't quite identify that you're good at, like when I was a drama teacher, probably the best example of being constrained. So before that, I was a youth worker, right? And I guess the good thing about being a youth worker is you're expected to be good at all sorts of different things, you know, not just one thing, to engage a wider base of young people as possible. And I did do drama with them, but also did off-road motorcycling, because I worked with young offenders in partnership with police, and, you know, whatever you could lend your hand to, and, you know, you did it well, and you got recommendations as to how well you did stuff, and even did poetry with adults with poor mental health. Though there was a specialist who was a poet, you know, I was getting them to sort of release themselves and how they perform their poetry. That was, again, another example where I just went up to them and said, do you need someone who can help them express themselves? Because I was at their launch for this charity, and the adults with poor mental health were like reading so nervously, and their hands were shaking like that I was thinking, that's not actually going to help their mental health performing. It's going to damage it, because you could see they're just clamming up. And they came back to me. It was the irony, because I've never done that before. But they came back to me and said, yeah, actually, we've consulted our clients, and we want you to run workshops to enable them to do poetry. And then from there, we went into schools and then taught in Edinburgh, in Scotland, using the adults with mental health conditions to then use their, so these adults had they couldn't do it in front of each other, and then got to the point they were going around schools doing it, talking about their mental health and sharing their poetry. So it got from 0 to 100 miles an hour type stuff. But when people put the constraints, and that was a good example of where there's no constraints, because the manager in charge of that charity really believed in what I could do. And you need other people to have that belief and want it to happen. In school teaching, it was completely different. So I went into school teaching after, like, you know, 3 or 4 years of youth work, because that's the way the climate was going. So if you weren't qualified, people were starting to advertise even youth work jobs that you had to have a teaching degree or a youth work degree, and it was like, it was squeezing out people who were really good at it but didn't have a degree in it, you know. And I haven't got my whole life to keep doing degrees every time I do something, you know. So yeah, I decided, well, I met my wife around about then, and she wanted to leave Edinburgh because she couldn't get a job, and she was a qualified teacher, and I was being offered work left, right and centre. And I think maybe part of that is the polymath aspect. So I was offered a job as a support lecturer in a college, and never worked in the college before, or as a lecturer, and bearing in mind, as a youth worker at the time, I wasn't a teacher. And I was offered a job. I was a student in this guy's class, and he came up to me afterwards and he said, I want you to apply for the job. I said, what job? I want you to be, you know, assisting me, because it was the class was, there's a thing called men and childcare at the time. And so I did a childcare course that was funded by Men and Childcare, because we need to have more male role models in childcare. It's mostly female, and you think about, you know, young people need both role models, and particularly boys need you need both role models, regardless of what gender you are. But, you know, if there's no men in your life, then it can be a skewed perspective. And I'm from a single parent family, so I do understand that. So I was just a student in the class, and And he passed me, of course, but he said, you're really good. Your answers are spot on. He said, I want you should be applying to be a lecturer here. You know, I was a student at the time, you know, and he kept pestering me. Every time I hadn't even finished the course. I was like halfway through the course, right? And then he kept saying, you know, have you applied? Have you put your application in yet? Have you put your application in yet? But I didn't go for it because my wife said, you know, it wasn't fair that I was getting all this work and she wasn't, which I understand. You know, you don't want to be stuck at home not doing anything. So I said, there's no point us leaving Edinburgh if I end up being unemployed in Kent, which is where we currently live. So I said, if we both move, let's both move to both being employed. And so I went down, we had a job interview at my first school. And I thought, if anyone's going to take someone who's unqualified and stuff, then all credit to them. And so she got the job because she's a qualified teacher, and they gave me a job as a drama teacher there at my first school. And so this is coming back to that sort of narrow way of thinking. And it doesn't matter how many years of youth experience I had or how good I was as a youth worker. I had the head of the department wanted me to throw any knowledge I had out the window, and it had to be done exactly how he wanted it done, to the point it was actually detrimental to the students' learning. There's no one and one of the things he said, because we all had to do English and maths as a government directive, and it still exists. We had to reset English and maths to make sure that teachers had a high level of English and maths to support students, which sort of makes sense, because if they're struggling with English or maths, you can help them even though you're doing drama, to support them in any subject. And so, yeah, I got a good grade in maths as well. And he said, oh, that's impossible. And I said, why? And he said, and bearing in mind, this is a drama teacher, and his background, he'd been an English teacher for 10, 15 years, right? He'd then gone into doing a drama teacher, never acted, never run shows outside of school. And he was telling me, and I remember I used to be a professional actor, and I'd done theatre, television and radio, voice work and stuff. So he was telling me that actors can't be, drama people are not allowed to be good at maths. And he was angry with that. He was actually a bully, real bully. And actually, I won't say his name, but it was later discovered that he was a paedophile as well. So, which is probably why he was bullying, right? So it was a control mechanism. Sorry for disclosing that on, but it's true. This is the things that you come across, and I've never come across stuff like that before. But yeah, he was very determined. His sense of identity was a very sort of two-sided coin, and this is what you have to be, and you've let the side down. So he ended up, I think he didn't just bully me because I was good at maths. So I think he bullied me because before I came down, there was a charity that I was asked to be on the board of directors for that was about supporting people who are adults who are survivors of sexual abuse. And he saw that on my CV, and he kept asking me questions about that. He says, how do you know what a pedophile looks like? I said, you don't, because they're just like any regular person, right? I can't tell what that is. Now, because he did get convicted, now I understand why he's asking me those questions. And so he tried to get me sacked. So he kept saying he's not a good enough drama teacher, and because I actually qualified on the job. So I remember studying at Canterbury Christ Church University. There's a thing where you can actually learn on the job. It's called a graduate teacher program. So you get the university, you go to university lessons on the theory of teaching and pedagogy and all that, and then you apply it. And in some ways, I think that's if I didn't have an environment where I was being bullied by somebody, I think that's one of the better ways of learning, because you're actually applying it as you're teaching it, and then you go off and get refreshed. And it gives you that invigoration. And I remember, I still passed in spite of, in fact, they told him off because he was making stuff up and he had no evidence for it. And I had other people who observed my teaching and said, he's a good teacher. And he kept trying to say he's a terrible teacher.
No, but he's good at math. He can't be good at drama.
Yeah, exactly.
It doesn't make any sense.
Exactly. Yeah, I think he felt intimidated. Yeah, well, because I'm from an acting background, and how can you be he said, you're going to learn everything you can about teaching from me. He said, you know, so that's just arrogance. I wouldn't say to someone, you can learn everything about teaching from me. You know, it's even if I was a good teacher, I think none of us are completely good because we're human. You're always trying to learn to better yourself and not better other people. But yeah, I had to leave school teaching because I went to another school, and this is a good example of this, and this might really illustrate your point. Right. So at that first school, and this partly illustrates it as well, I'd asked to teach media, and they said, no, you can't teach media. You're an English teacher. Oh, no, you're not an English teacher. You have to be qualified as an English teacher. You're qualified as a drama teacher. You can't teach media. Okay. So I went to my second school, and there I was teaching performing arts, which is a bit broader than just drama, and you could teach the older students as well. And I remember being told that I wasn't allowed to help with the lighting because I wasn't head of department, even though I'd worked professionally in lighting, you know, and the head of department didn't know anything about lighting. So I didn't know anything technical. So I went, okay, that's fine. And then, and bear in mind, this is my third year of teaching, right? So, you know, so I'm still quite new. They asked me to join a program where I could become head of department and get my master's in education. And they were going to fast track me up through that process. You know, you go to become head of department, then head teacher. So it's one of those sort of programs. And I've only been teaching a couple of years at that stage. I turned them down, and I think because I said, I want one more year of teaching before I go into management, because I don't really feel that you can actually manage something, other people doing something, if you I've only just graduated. I've only just qualified as a teacher because it took 2 years on the job to do that. And they didn't like that as a response. And that's, again, that sort of pigeonholing that you have to be I mean, I always said was wait a year. I just want to get used to the students in your system in the school. So drama covers, in the UK, drama covers English. This should not be a surprise. When we study Shakespeare in English classes in schools in the UK, Shakespeare was a dramatist, right? He's a storyteller. And I remember going to the head of English in the school, and I said to her, look, you know, because this is my first year at that new school, and I said, right, what would be really good, you know, is I could teach them the practical aspects of the plays that you're covering, because drama didn't have a curriculum, whereas English did. Okay, so we're allowed to write our own schemes of work. So that's basically the plan of the whole education thing and all the lesson plans. So I had free form to write what I wanted to write. And so I said, look, if you tell me the names of your plays that you're studying per year group, so year 7, year 8, based on their ages, then I will write my schemes of work around that and support you. And then hence, you know, Shakespeare wasn't really designed to be read. You know, you understand it through performance and also watching. But then that will help them have a better understanding of the text, and then you're teaching the understanding of the text, which will help them better with the performance of it, and then we can work in partnership that way. Anyway, she refused. And I said, she said, no, I can't do that. And she said, no, I haven't got the time to do that. I said, oh, sorry, my fault. Maybe I wasn't very clear. I wasn't asking you to write my curriculum for me. All I just want to know is the names of the plays. You know, so it's not, just put in an email, you know, 1 minute, boom, because you know the names of each play that you're the head of English type thing. I wasn't being sarky, I was just being, you know, pleasant. Yeah, you know, so that's why I went to the head of English. You know, what are the names of the plays each year and stuff, you know, just quickly, and I'll write it and I'll send it to you and show you what we're doing in drama and stuff, and then work together. And she said, no, I haven't got time. Now, I'm also, part of my personality is I know when someone's bullshitting. If that makes sense. Sorry for using the word bullshit.
That's a good alarm system.
Good to be direct with these things.
Yeah. So, but then I was the junior in the school, and so I thought, well, she's blocking And at the end of the day, we were trained as teachers. I'm a qualified teacher. And one of the things that we said is what we're trained in is we're preparing children to become adults for working life. It's a bit like the Hippocratic oath that that doctors have, is do no harm.
Yeah.
Whereas ours was prepare for adult life. And we're called in parentis locus, which means in replacement of parent, and the parent is there to prepare them for adult working life. And I was saying, why are we doing it? We're not really preparing them for adult working life, because when adult working life, you're multidisciplinary, you have to learn to work together. And so if school teachers aren't prepared to work together, how are we expecting children to work together in teams? So I did actually ask one of my students, I said, what are you studying in English? What plays do you do? Which is a reasonable thing to ask your students when you're teaching drama. And they told me. You can guess what I did next. So I wrote, so the students told me, because she's obviously too busy to tell me. So if she's too busy, I can just ask the students. She never said no, right? Get this. She wasn't honest. If she was honest, then we could have an honest conversation. She just said she was too busy. So I started teaching Romeo and Juliet to the year 7s, because that's what they're studying in English. Straight away, within the week, the head teacher came to observe my lessons. And we had this lesson, and I did I don't know, you remember Baz Luhrmann's Romeo and Juliet?
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's the sort of gas station scene, and it's quite visceral and full of tension and stuff, and I love Baz Luhrmann's version of Romeo and Juliet, because he still uses the original language, but puts it into its context of, this is essentially two gangs, So I showed them that excerpt, but also, so I want you to do your own version, but about the fights, because there's no fighting there, but the tension, and then put the tension into your language. And that's the weird thing in the UK drama system in schools, and I'll illustrate this because I'm a trained actor, is we expect them at a young age with their puberty to get up with barely any training in front of a class of 30 within one lesson to write script and perform it in front of their peers when they're going through puberty, and this is from the boys and girls. And we wonder why young people don't like drama, right? So I remember one of my cousins, or my cousin-in-law, my cousin's husband, he's an award-winning actor in New Zealand, and he came to visit me. He's now a teacher. He's now head of department in New Zealand for drama, but he wasn't a teacher back then. He came to visit me and here in the UK, and I was a teacher then. And he said, "Oh, what do you teach?" And I showed him. He says, "Really?" He said, "We didn't do all that in drama school. How can you expect kids to do that within 50 minutes?" I said, "Yeah, well, that's what they expect here in the UK." He said, but really? So they had to do they had to write this and perform it in front of their peers, and they did a really good job. And the head teacher, was going, and so as all observations go for teachers, you're meant to get feedback at the end of the lesson. And it's very brief feedback, because you've got another lesson to teach, and it's an incredibly stressful thing. And you have to prep your brain for teaching something for another class. And he said, "Oh, that was a risk." And I said, "What do you mean? What? Because this is the feedback." I said, "What was the risk?" He says, "We did Shakespeare with them." And I said, "Okay, but that's on the curriculum for English. What's the risk? I don't understand." So, because they have to understand in English, and that's the curriculum set by the UK government. Why can't I do it in the classroom? And he said, "Well, they might not have understood it." Well, this really underlies this is wrong, isn't it? Because if you're teaching them this in English, why is that a risk for me to teach it in drama? Because they might not understand it, because they're expected to understand it at that year group. It doesn't make sense. So I said, "Okay, but did you see that happen?" That was my direct question to him. I said, "Did you see them not understand it?" He said, "No, but that's besides the point." And I said, "Why?" And he said, "But they might not have." I said, "But the observation is actually on my lesson." And he said, I I said, did they engage? He said, yes. And he really didn't like saying it. I said, did they learn something? Yes. But okay, so what's the problem? And he says, but they might not have. You took a huge risk. And so that really, in that one word, risk, sums up what bad education is about. Where we're measuring, we're not about educating, we're not about allowing young people to take risks in their learning, because that's how you learn. Like you just pretty much summed up how I've learned so much in my time, and so I take risks.
Yeah, you have the chance for failure.
Yeah, but if you expect, oh, I've got a lovely story for you about the chance for failure that was removed from that school. Completely removed from that school, and I'll give you an illustration for that. But yeah, you've got a chance for failure, and you've got to learn to fail. You've got to learn to understand what failure is about a learning opportunity to do better next time. You know, so risk is a good thing. And a lot of, and I still do it, you know, you get young people come to me who are unemployed and they won't take risks. And, you know, they've been conditioned, and I call it the condition, I don't blame them, but they've been conditioned to not take risks, and that they won't try something unless they're going to be 100% successful at it when they first start. Well, that's not true. That's not real life. No one's 100%.
It's never the case.
It's never the case. And I think it's not just school education. I blame media shows. You know, there's reality TV shows where everyone seems instantly successful, and the press present, and social media. And I have actually asked them, I said, what do you think is the real reason why you're like this and you've all got poor mental health? There's a real increase in poor mental health. And they said social media. Because to me, you know, rather than me trying to go to conferences and guess what the problems are, why don't you just ask them directly? I've got access to them. Why don't you just ask?
You have the right audience in front of you.
Yeah, exactly.
Gather data.
Yeah, so they said social media, and it's true. You know, social media is about everyone presenting themselves risk-free and perfect and smiles and, oh, I did this and it's all perfect. But we've got absolutely no risk there. And then, of course, if you do take a risk, or if you don't do something perfectly, you've got all this trolling and negativity and this hate-filled sort of environment of attacking. So people bullying, essentially. And you know, I'm quite open that I've been bullied my whole life in different aspects. You know, not everyone bullies me, but you know, and then there's things I need to work on to make sure that I don't get bullied.
Thank you for clarifying. Thank you for
clarifying.
Yeah, not everybody does that. An important thing to mention.